Increasing your marketing communications response by using segmentation is not a new concept. It's been around for over 100 years, and to witness that, you only need to look at the automotive industry and how far we've come since that famous Henry Ford quote that you can buy any Model T you like in any color as long as it's black. My name's Michael Tucker, founder of the Conversion Store. And one of the things that is really interesting about today's digital marketing environment is that we now have the processing power and the capabilities, especially with online technology, to be able to do segmentation in much more advanced and meaningful ways. And specifically, we're talking about being able to communicate by the promotional side of the marketing mix as opposed to just the product side of it. Well, how do we do this inside of Marketo? And one of the confusing pieces that a lot of people who are marketers who are just coming into Marketo find is that the segmentation part of Marketo is not referring to the actual marketing tactic of segmenting an audience, but is actually a product feature in and of itself. So we're going to walk through how to build out a segmentation using the segmentations feature of Marketo today. And we'll also talk a little bit about where you can use those segments in the segmentations within your Design Studio assets inside of Marketo to be able to increase the response rates in your marketing communication plan. Before we do that, I think it's important to be able to look at exactly what we're trying to achieve from a marketing communication standpoint, theoretically. So we're going to dive into a couple of charts just quickly to take a look at exactly what happens when we try to segment an audience. So one of the things to understand about Marketo and being able to personalize using segmentation is that you don't start out usually by communicating via segmentation in Marketo as soon as you begin with it. In fact, most marketers don't. Usually what we'll see is that marketers will evolve their maturity as they get familiar with marketing automation and they get familiar with the target audiences that they want to be able to communicate with. And so usually they'll start out with this sort of batch and blast approach, which we don't really recommend, but if you don't have a lot of information about your target audience, that's really what you're left with. You're building out one email send. It could be an email send program, or it could be a default program that has an email asset that you're sending out. And you're creating content that you're sending to all of these different types of groups of people. You're basically picking broad swaths of people in your Marketo database, and you're sending out emails to them. There's usually some criteria that's put in place here. Maybe there's something about like a job title or something like that you're hitting specific types of targets towards, but it's not very complicated, it's not very sophisticated, and it's certainly the email itself does not change at all. So you'll actually see that the same email will be sent out, and we're hoping that we'll see trends inside of the data by putting in email performance reports or email link performance reports to be able to see who is responding to what types of content over time. As you get more information about this, you can start to build out some personalization by individuals. And the way that you do this is you create email assets, but you can plug in tokens, so either lead tokens or person tokens, if you want to call them that, or even local tokens, and build out different email assets that have different types of copy in it, and have those sent out to specific individuals. So in this case, we use kind of a Smokey and the Bandit example here, and you can see we have an email that has first name and last name tokens for Burt Reynolds and for Sally Field and for Willie Nelson, right? It's not that customized. It's basically customized to each individual. And one of the things that we see with it, it's a little bit better because it gives you a little bit more personalized message, but it's dated. Everybody has had those dear so-and-so, dear first name emails. And you also run the risk with this that if there's any problems with your data, so let's say that they have the first name incorrect, or somebody's being cheeky and they put in just the letter N or an exclamation mark as their first name, then that will populate inside of the Marketo instance unless you have a data management program operationally to be able to check against that. And so it's hit and miss about how this level of personalization works. It gets you a step farther than batch and blast, but we can do better. And when I say we can do better, think about personalizing by segments. So here we are picking different types of generalizations, if you will, and picking out different types of examples of segments that we would communicate to based on their demographic and their psychographic information. And so we're using an example again from our parking lot party example that we've been using throughout Marketo Minutes. And so here we have three different types of segments: outdoor enthusiasts, fleet managers, and heads of household. And each email, it's one email that we're building out, but we're building in dynamic content that is based on each of these segments. And so we're trying to be able to personalize the email. And because we have more information than is just their first name and last name, we're trying to identify them and categorize them by again these demographic and these behavioral examples. It gives us a little bit more to be able to build even a better crafted email. Basically, we might have hundreds or thousands of people or even millions of people in our Marketo database. So we really need to have rules like this in order to be able to communicate to people on a one-to-one basis at scale. So one of your first steps in creating your segmentations in Marketo is before you get into Marketo, you need to think about the business case for why you are segmenting and what are the rules and reasons for that you want to build within each of your segments. So really our goal here is to be able to create segments that are homogeneous within, so that when I look at segment A, every single person that is within segment A is as similar as possible to every other person that is also within segment A. If you have people that are outliers, maybe the marketing communications that you're building for segment A might appeal to person 1 or person 2, but it might not appeal to person 3 at all. So it's important that we find people that are homogeneous within. And we also want them to be heterogeneous in between, so that people that are within segment A are different than people who are within segment B. Maybe people who are in segment A are people that live in the greater New York City area, and people that are in segment B live in the greater Boston area. Completely different. If you find somebody who is in New York or in the Northeast, for example, then you might have people that are in both segment A, New York City, and segment B, Boston, and it makes it harder to be able to communicate with them. So we want to be able to try and pick audiences and pick our criteria in that example where we would say city equals New York City, Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, Long Island, different places like that. In segment B, we might say Boston, Cambridge, and different types of communities there. So it's really important to go through this process in advance and say, what am I trying to do from a business side of things? And once you've done that, let's jump into the Marketo instance and we'll see where to take those rules and build them inside of your Marketo. Okay, so now we're inside of our Marketo database and we're in the database tab of this Marketo instance. And to get to segmentations, you'll see at the very bottom that we have a folder here that actually is called Segmentations. This is very different than a smart list or a regular list or a system smart list because these are segmentations that are actually going to be used. They're specifically defined to be able to be used to populate dynamic content in other areas of Design Studio. So when you go to right click on this, you'll see that there's actually a new segmentations folder. It's not like creating a local asset for a smart list, for example, and not like this at all. You're going into segmentations and you'll see here that you name the segment and then you build out additional segments. And you can make these quite exhaustive. I think you can go up to about 100 segments, if I remember correctly, on these and inside of a segmentation. And there's a link here to take you to the Marketo documentation to tell you a little bit more here. But basically what you'll do is you'll name all of these segments. So you'll have segment A, segment B, it's so and so on and so forth. Don't name them segment A or segment B. Name them something that's based off of what criteria you're trying to send. So let me show you here. Here we have three different segmentations in this Marketo instance. So here we have buyer personas, and you'll see we have one for corporate fleet managers, one for media analysts, who are members of the media that you want to be able to target, people who are off-road enthusiasts, and people for suburban families. And inside of each of these, you can see that we have some criteria around them. So in this case, we're talking about job titles. Would they be a CEO? Would they have a corporate title? If they are suburban families, they're going to have a different set. They'll have a family size that they might use, for example. And so here we'll talk about this, and we'll say if it's more than two people, then there's a family involved. Here we might talk about off-road enthusiasts, and here we also might wind up using job title. We might be able to use something like date of birth if we can gather that, or information about maybe if you attend school, if your job title is a student, something like that. Right? So you have a lot of different options that are here in terms of how you want to describe your segments. In fact, they don't even have to be built off of people at all. They might be built around the geography or the weather conditions that they're in. So this is an example that we used for our weather personalization solution to be able to talk about people who might be in rainy environments, people who might have snow in their environments. And so you'll see that this is all around the weather category field that we have built into this particular Marketo instance, which we're populating with our weather personalization. And we'll show you an example of how to use that actually in a minute here. But one of the things you say, okay, well, I've gone ahead, I've built out my segmentation. Terrific. Well, what's the point of this? Well, one of the things that happens here is after you build out your segmentation, you'll actually be able to go ahead and make use of a feature in Marketo called dynamic content. So let me give you an example of how this works. If we are doing an invitation to a specific experiential event around this parking lot party, this is the preview of an email that is built out for a boat launch event. Now notice we have some content in here, and it looks like it's tokenized by date. We have some details around the time that the event starts, and we have some copy and some imagery here that's appealing to a specific segment of our population. That is in our database that is making use out of this that we're trying to send this specific invitation out to. And notice if you go into view by, once you build out these segmentations, you have the ability to be able to choose the type of segmentation that you're using. So in this case, we have the buyer personas segment that we're building out, and so you'll see that we have a specific set of image and copy that's here for suburban families. If I flip this to off-road enthusiasts, it's the same email that I'm sending out, but Marketo can actually match by the database and change the imagery and change some of the copy as well to be able to really speak to that specific audience. Likewise, if we're going to corporate fleet managers, have a completely different set of graphics. We have some similarities here, so that there's a specific type of trade dress, if you will, that just talks a little bit about the dealership, talks a little bit about the offering that we have here. We're still talking about a Chevy pickup truck in all of these different examples. But here, you know, if this is corporate fleet managers, we might change this to the GMC brand, for example. So there's a lot of different options that you have available. But segmentations can go a step deeper than just talking about the specific segments or the personalizations of the target audience that you want to deal with. In this case, we've built an example that's a fictitious example based on a real company where Lowe's Home Improvement might be able to send out an email once a week that would be able to suggest do-it-yourself projects for people that are new homeowners. And understand that the home improvement industry in many ways is dictated by the weather conditions that are happening in your specific market at a specific period of time. You really don't want to be doing roofing in the middle of winter if you're in Wisconsin. And likewise, if you are here in the Charlotte area, what's the point of working on your furnace in the middle of August? So we built out this Marketo instance to be able to have personalization that's based off of weather conditions, like we talked about a little earlier. And so understand here, if you take a look at this email, you'll see that we have links to different store information or blogs or content to be able to help empower home improvement, do-it-yourself couples. But we also have this ability to be able to change some of this content. You can tell, perfect for patio season, it's probably talking about call to actions related to the summertime. But if it's not summer at the moment, or let's say that it's rainy, we want to change some of this content so that we can say it's raining outside. Why don't you work on something indoors? So you still have an email send that goes out to this couple or this family that is a new homeowner, but you're going to change all of your copy and your call to action and all of the potential products that you're offering to them to be able to be related to indoor painting projects, something that they can do from an indoor environment. And so you have these abilities to be able to use segments based on geography or geographic conditions to be able to change the environment that you're making offers. Notice that I'm in the same email here as well. So I can send this email or put it inside of a nurture campaign, or excuse me, a nurture program in Marketo and not change anything about it, but I can plug different people from different census metropolitan areas or demographic metropolitan areas inside of the same nurture, and they will receive the email with the right content for what's happening in their specific marketplace. So this Marketo instance will monitor weather conditions for each of the geographies that we're sending to our target audience, and we'll say if you're in Boston and you know that it's snowing, and you are in Florida and you know that it's sunny, the same email will look completely different to each of those people based on what we're seeing inside of the Marketo database and the weather information that we're pulling into this Marketo instance. So segmentation's very powerful. The more thought you put into the different segments, the better you'll be able to speak to the individual members of that segment, and it'll help improve the effectiveness of your marketing. I hope you found this interesting. If you are looking for additional information, visit us at conversionstore.com, or feel free to send a email to us at hello@conversionstore.com, and we'd be pleased to tell you a little bit more about what we've built out here today.